So if we go back to talking about the Great Wall, the Hercules Borealis, the Corona Borealis, what is really interesting about it is it might actually be even bigger than what it seems. Because if you think about every other object in space, it's way bigger than we can ever imagine. I mean, these are just estimations, unless we really could measure accurately one side to the next. I mean, you'd be very surprised how far away an object can appear, and then if you really can graduate its distance, you'd be surprised how much bigger it could be up close. It's also worth noting that the Great Wall, the Hercules Borealis, is actually at least 10.5 billion light years in diameter, the highest. As of right now, it could be bigger because again, size comparisons to like other galaxies and all that. We've noticed that like our galaxy is a lot bigger than we think it is, and I still think our galaxy would be the easiest one to measure because we're inside of it. But even then, you still have to find like the diameter and then the circumference of it, trying to figure out what it really looks like. So, and then you have like the Andromeda galaxy that's merging with ours, trying to figure out the additional length that would be. Everything in space, here's something interesting to think about also. Everything in space increases in mass while it's also burning off mass. But galaxies, as they get older, they get bigger because they're either merging with something else. We see this with stars, we see this with black holes, we see this with a lot of other objects. Things just absorb each other and they turn into something bigger. Everything's made of energy. Energy uses energy to make more energy, basically. So that's interesting, actually. So with something like a star cycle and something as big as quasars and whatnot, or even radioactivity or not something like that, radiation creates more mass and matter, more energy, subgroups of energy rather. But anyways, so how many galaxies? Okay, a galaxy filament as of right now, filament is the biggest known structure in a universe, like that we know of. The observable universe has just been upped from 93 billion light years to 7 trillion light years. Now, if you don't know what that means, 1 light year is 5.88 trillion miles, or aka 5 trillion 880 billion miles. 1 mile is 5,280 feet, if you didn't know that. But anyways, so that should give you an idea realistically, like what to look at. It's still a big number. But anyways, so when you think about scaling and all that in the universe, everything has to be upped, because everything's too close. Like, I mean, if you look at the average, one thing I've always been obsessed with is like finding out the average distance of certain objects in space, how close they are. When they discovered the Borealis, the Hercules Borealis, they basically said that there's just too many galaxies that are too close based on research that we know. It has to be that every galaxy, there's a lot of galaxies out there that are just too close to each other. There has to be more out there. So this object has to be very big, obviously, and the galaxies inside also have to be large, and there's a large number of them very close together, holding each other together somehow. And it really just goes to show you what really a lot of people don't see, what a lot of people don't know. And so it really begs the question, what are we not seeing? What do we not know about how big everything is? It's just, other than the one thing that makes the most logical sense is to say it's greater than, chances are, what we know. So a question I want to ask is, okay, so if you have a galaxy filament that is roughly billions of light years, in this case 10.5 billion light years at least, if you go down one group, you have superclusters, if I got this right. Not to get confused with hyperclusters and other, I'm trying to think if that's another name for galaxy filaments. Basically, as of right now, and because some of this stuff is hard to find online, you get a lot of outdated information, and sometimes you got to be like really, you got to really research this and organize it well. But the question is simple, but it's a more complex answer. How many superclusters can you fit inside of a galaxy filament? Or better yet, if we were to take the Great Hercules Borealis, how many superclusters are inside of it as of right now? As of right now, last time I checked, galaxy superclusters are basically galaxy clusters of galaxies nearby. So basically, in case you understand this, you have solar systems, you have star systems, you have planets, you have galaxies as they go out more. You have galaxy clusters, which are basically galaxies inside of a cluster. You have superclusters. You have, and then it gets even more complex as it goes out more. It's basically, think of it like this: the labeling might be a little, mixed up a little bit, but it's like the further out you go, the more you're seeing. The more you zoom in, the more you're seeing as well. So the smaller you get, but it's like basically a box inside of another box inside of another box, and that's kind of how the universe is. With energy, you have like different things inside of something else. It's even smaller, all the way up until you get to the observable universe from what we've seen so far. It's up to galaxy filaments. What's bigger than a galaxy filament, and how many galaxy filaments are in that, and how many superclusters are inside a galaxy filament on average. In this case, the Hercules, the Great Wall, rather. So if I was to guess, I mean, really, supercluster-wise, the average distance of a supercluster can be anywhere between, we're talking like 100 million light years that a supercluster can be. And sometimes it can go a little bit down more. I think it's like 80 million light years. No, is it 80 million? So somewhere around there. 80 million, maybe way less than that too. 80, 20. Yeah, it's like, I mean, they say there's at least, one number I was able to find is that there's at least 800 superclusters inside the Great Boreas. And that's still a lot. That doesn't seem like a big number, but it is. But it's, there could be more though, and it makes me really think, like, how many galaxies can you really think of that are in that lifespan? Or rather, how many galaxies can you think of realistically that could be in a distance of that? Because if every galaxy really is a lot bigger than we think it is, obviously that number has to be bigger. But if we were to keep the ratio the same, like for example, our galaxy is said to be 200,000 light years, but the biggest I've ever heard was like 1.9 million light years. And the proof I have of it is that, it goes based on an article that they claim they found one edge of it, because somehow we're like near the center of it almost. Not like near the center, but it's like but we're there though. And so supposedly we found one of the edges, and they said it was this distance away from that one side. But well, what about the other side, though, if you were to draw a straight line the opposite way? Now you still got to find that side. And they said it was at least 1.9 million. It could be bigger than that because we haven't found an accurate depiction of both sides. And therefore, we can't accurately measure the circumference, because if you don't know the diameter of a circumference of the circle, you would have to take the diameter and multiply that by 3.14. Again, pi in this case, March 14th. But the thing is, though, if we're trying to get complex, what are we trying to prove with this, though? It kind of gives you an idea of how to look at this whole thing. How big is this object realistically? Not just the diameter of it, but also the, if you really want to get an idea of like the diameter of it, take 3.14 and times that by 10.5 billion. And just to kind of get an idea of where we're at right now, it's actually very impressive, rather, that they've figured out this so far. But anyways, but I'd have to say, like, with the average galaxies and the average, there's no doubt there's probably billions or at least millions, hundreds of millions of galaxies within this cluster, or even in superclusters, maybe thousands, almost 1,000, hundreds, maybe thousands. And I'd have to say, as far as galaxies, if it's not millions, maybe thousands, hundreds of thousands. It's interesting, just how big the universe can be after a certain amount of time. Like, because here's something else that I found out a while ago, and this is still debatable, but it's true though, based on some statistics we found. Like, even if we were to take like our galaxy, they did this was back in 2013, they did the Gaia project. I don't know if it was a telescope they used or if it was a satellite, if you don't consider that the same thing. Because in science, how things can be subgrouping. But anyways, so they used this thing called the Gaia Project, and the Gaia Project was able to send out sonars. I think it was a satellite, or maybe it was just the project name. But anyways, they sent out like this, they came back with this analytic map, and they said for 326 light years, they rounded it up to 326 because that's basically 100 parsecs. One parsec is 3.26 light years, 19 trillion miles, if you didn't know that. So what's really interesting is the amount of research that went into this. They took 326 light years of our galaxy, and they have determined there is an average of 1.7 billion stars, greater than, because there were some stars they couldn't pick up, red dwarf stars that don't burn as hot, cool stars. So they went under the radar a little bit. But they say for every 326 billion light years, or not billion, 326 light years, we have 1.7 billion stars on average. So that led me to the realization that if our galaxy is at least 9.9, like if our galaxy is 1.9 million light years in diameter, I wouldn't be surprised we have trillions of stars in our galaxy, like maybe 9.9, because that's what that would realistically average out to. But I mean, maybe that number's off a little bit, but it's an estimation though. It's just kind of getting me thinking though, like, you know, if we really, can you imagine if you had a galaxy that was that big, and how many stars could be a part? That's basically like saying that there's like 500,000, I think it was like 550,000 if I remember correctly, on average. That's maybe a little, but rounded down or rounded up a little bit. But imagine having 550,000 stars per light year, per 5.88 trillion miles. Like, I mean, to say that there's not life out there. I mean, you got people that believe in stuff like the Fermi paradox and all that, where there's no life out there, but it's like, that's not true. There has to be a civilization out there somewhere, you know. I mean, every planet we come across so far, it looks like there's nothing there, but we're looking at it wrong, because every life form is different. Same thing with energy. They found out in space that there's life forms that can survive negative almost 500 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what it is in Celsius because I use Fahrenheit, but, you know, something nuts like that, like close to that. Absolute zero is like negative 300 something. I always forget what it is, but it's like, or was it like 327 or something like that? Negative 327, somewhere around there, 300, somewhere around there. I'm off by a little bit, I know I am, but it's just an estimation though. But what's crazy is, you know, humans wouldn't survive that. There's no way. But there's germs that can survive that, and it can fly in space, float. And then they stick to like an asteroid that comes flying by, and then they go flying into like another, they crash land on another planet, and then they terraform it over years, you know, evolution. Everything changes. Everything's in motion. That's how this stuff comes to be. You know, whether it's like some kind of a creation of something, you know, but it's interesting though, you know, energy. So other than that, if you think about it, what else was there? It really makes you think about life in space. Really is just, it's like an ecosystem inside of a bigger ecosystem. Your body's an ecosystem, this planet's an ecosystem, the universe we live in is an ecosystem. Like, it doesn't look like there's anything out there, but there's a whole bunch of stuff, more than we can even comprehend, even what we can see right in front of our eyes. And that's just nuts to think. That really is to think, like, how big is the universe and how much do we not see it, is basically what this all comes down to. Trying to understand why I'm even making this video, you know, trying to reach out to people that could listen to this and say, hey, you know what? Who agrees with this? There has to be something out there somehow. But anyways, if you're still listening to this video, you know, the galaxies that are out there, I would not be surprised there's more out there than we could ever comprehend. And that's what makes life grand, because it gives you a reason to be inspired to try to look at things differently and try to learn something new somehow, whatever it may be. So hopefully you have a nice day or a wonderful day. Please subscribe if you're not already. And if you want to support this channel, you can. Just let me know.